Hello, Tom Lavecchia here with the New Theory podcast. We have a and I say very special guest today, Francis Dinha, hopefully I pronounce it correctly, who is actually related to Nineveh Madsen, who was previously on of her magazine, and she turned me on to this very special guest, Mr. Francis Dinha. Francis, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
It's our pleasure, and this is a story of stories where Francis. I'll let you say because this is. I mean, I read his bio. I got chills. So, Francis, when we start off the show, really, when we start off the show, we'd like to start with walk us through your formative years, which I know you have a lot to talk about. Where you grew up, how it was, and walk us through that.
All right. Well, my name is Francis Dinham. I'm the founder and CEO of OpenVPN. And okay, so to start, as a young boy, I was actually born in northern Iraq, in a very small village there, close to Turkey and Iraq. So I have some memory there in northern Iraq because we escaped northern Iraq because of some of the destructive bombing. That basically there was a lot of problems between the Kurdish and the government, and then we got caught in the middle. So they bombed everywhere, including our homes.
Wow.
So I remember that. That was pretty much devastating, right? So that actually forced us to flee pretty much to Baghdad. But at home, obviously, we spoke a different language. We spoke Assyrian Aramaic, which is the Jesus language. So we were Christian, Assyrian Christian, living in a country that I was a little bit confused about it. And so we fled to Baghdad. And it was a new city with no home, obviously. Very, very hard for my parents with 7 children. Hardships because we didn't speak the language either, the Arabic language, because we were taught a different language.
Wow.
So my dad had to start working, and my sister and trying to survive. We all lived in pretty much one room,
Wow.
all of us. Pretty tough. So, but anyhow, I was pretty much inspired by. Trying to find a way we can survive, right? To feed the family and move forward with life. But I was also fortunate because I was the youngest one. And my parents were able to provide to a certain extent. But I never forget one story, obviously, that when I was pretty much hungry one day and I asked my mother, do we have anything to eat? And I actually tell this story, and she actually was very sad, and she told me, I said, what's going on? She said, well, I don't have enough money to really cook right now. This is the only money I've got. I can't really feed all 7 people here. And so I thought about it, and well, I told her, okay, give me the money. So I thought about, to solve this. So I went and bought a couple of packs of cigarettes and went to the downtown Baghdad and sold 1 cigarette at a time and made more money and came back to her. I was starving, obviously. Now we can go to grocery and get some food. So that's basically how it started my life in Baghdad.
Wow. There's a lot there, and there's a lot. But what I want to ask is, typically when there's a revolution or a coup or change or anything,
Mm-hmm.
you guys moved there obviously for a reason, right? So as I understand it, you were Syrian legacy Christians in a Muslim country, right? But what was your life like prior? Were you professional class? You guys were in good shape, or were you guys kind of always at a disadvantage, kind of being where you were? Where were you from maybe a socioeconomic status prior to that upheaval?
Well, I mean, my dad and my mother, they were farmers. So they used to own a big land in northern Iraq. They used to farm. So
Oh wow.
as my memories when I was 5 years old, we had a very nice farm. We have all kind of animals. We have food. We have a good life as farming, right? But my dad told me a lot of stories also about his story prior, before I was born. They had to escape also from Iraq to Syria for 7 years before I was born, but that was 1933. And
Wow.
the reason there, it was another war, but that war was a little bit different, more devastating, because at the time there was also the genocides of Christians and Assyrian in that region,
Yes.
like what you see with ISIS right now.
Yes.
That like they killing the Christian, they're killing anybody that they don't believe in their whatever their version of Islam, and they're killing even Muslims who
Wow.
disagree with them.
Wow.
But at the time, remember, I mean, think about it, right now, 70, 80 years back, was different. Definitely, there was a fraction of even the government, actually. This was even came from the central government. For 3 days, the law was effective to basically carry out the genocides against Christian and Assyrian. And so my family were forced to escape. And so they escaped to Syria at the time. That genocide didn't happen in Syria, it happened in northern Iraq. So we go back as a farmer, and I mean, that's what my family, so that's the, but as a Christian, we always felt kind of, okay, I mean, this is like kind of strange, right? You go to certain maybe neighborhood or an area. There are a lot of good people. There are a lot of good Muslims. There's a lot of good friends I had there. But then you meet some people who are very conservative. Their views of this religion was very twisted. It was very hard to deal with them. So it's kind of we learned how to deal with those issues.
Okay. And then at that point, when you guys left Iraq, how old were you and where did you go?
No, you mean when I left Iraq? No, my dad, when they left Iraq to Syria, that was in
Correct.
1933.
I'm
I
saying
wasn't born.
I want.
I wasn't born.
No, correct,
So
correct, correct. I want to go chronologically where I have you guys in Baghdad now,
yes,
and then you stayed for so many time, right? What age
yes,
did
yeah.
you? Yeah, what age did you leave Iraq, and where did you go?
Oh, okay. So in Baghdad, I stayed until I was 20 years old. So I went there to school, through high school, and even part 3 years in college, and then I was the first one who actually took the initiatives. And the reason why there, because the whole government was like not just corrupt; it was a dictatorship. They were basically executing anybody that disagreed with them. So the whole political climate was not very healthy climate. And I was inspired always by Beatles. I was playing guitar. I love the freedom. And then I thought to myself, I'm just gonna leave. And there were a few Assyrian and Christian. They were also leaving Iraq. So I decided I was the first member of my family to actually go to Sweden. So I went and applied for an asylum in Sweden. And then after a year, the whole family came to Sweden. So and that was 1977 when I actually left Iraq to Sweden.
Wow. So if I remember correctly, and I read your bio, so you went to Sweden for a year. You didn't speak the language. Like you washed dishes, right? I mean, like, what did you do? If I read it correctly.
Okay, so that was another thing. Obviously, struggle. You go to a country that you can't speak the language. I spoke a little bit of English because that was kind of another language I taught myself, and also we were studying English in Iraq, and I spoke Assyrian and Arabic. So, but I want to go on and finish my degree and get a degree in computer engineering, and I was very passionate about the programming and all that. So I had to learn the language. So I really put myself through the school and very hardship, and in terms of working at the same time, learning the language. So I was washing dishes. Of course, I was at the restaurant washing dishes and,
Yeah.
and trying to pay for my bills. And then after 9 months, I actually passed the exam. I learned the language. I wouldn't say mastered it 100%, but it was really pretty good, where it was at the level that I could be, going to the college. So I was able start, the college there. But at the same time, when I was studying, I was still washing dishes, and I was doing some other works as well. I worked at a hospital, and at the end of the year of my degree, then I was actually able to get a job at the university as a research assistant. So I was actually teaching. And so the last 2, 3 years before I left Sweden, I was doing my PhD. The idea is I was going to finish my PhD at the university, but I was at the same time teaching while I was doing my PhD. So I guess from selling cigarettes to washing dishes, to teaching at the university, and
Well, no, I mean it's all part of the journey. Okay, so there's a lot, and I love this already. So at this point, you had an affinity, or at least loved, programming and computer science, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so obviously washing dishes doesn't allow you to expand on that vocation. Did you have a computer at night that you kind of tinker with, or did you have to take a respite for a year and then kind of
Oh,
rejoin?
definitely. I was tinkering with computers a lot during the college, and I was actually building my own even motherboards. I was wire wrapping it, and I was at the time, the technology. We're talking about in the 70s, right? 78, 79,
Wow.
right? Early 80s. So I had to actually. It wasn't very easy to go and just buy a computer, so it wasn't available right there, right? So I had to actually build a motherboard, put all the memories, and start writing programming at the very low level, at the assembler level. I was so passionate. But at the same time, I had the passion for music. So I said, well, I love music. I play guitar. So I started even building a drum synthesizer. I start building other things in terms of software that I can maybe play instruments through the computer. So so I did a lot of even hardware, actually. I did design. My first computer, I designed it myself from scratch. I mean, from scratch, wire wrapping and writing even the operating system of it. It was a very simple operating system. It wasn't such, everything was available for you that you can write at a very high level like today with all these programming languages and all that. What I wrote there was assembler language. It was a very low level languages that you have to really program in the chip itself, and then start testing. Oh, my keyboard, now it's working. Now I can get my keyboard inputting, and now I can see the screen is displaying all the letters I'm typing. Oh, great.
All right. So listen. So you at that point, despite having the numerous challenges that you faced, you still kept that penchant for what you love, which was computers, hardware, software, and that lexicon. So that all makes sense, right? Now,
That's absolutely.
yeah, and that's great. So we're millennial focused, so the folks that are going to listen to this are going to be a little younger than both of us, and the goal is to give the message and lesson of what you learn. And what I'm extracting from this conversation, 13 minutes into it, is despite the challenges that you have, you need to kind of stick with what you love. Obviously, you got to survive, you got to eat. But then also part-time, stick with what you love, because, that's what's going to get you through it. So I'm assuming, it sounds corny, but I'm assuming computers and IT probably got you through a lot of hard times, correct?
Oh, absolutely. A combination with music too. So I love the music, playing music. That was relaxing for me too. And I knew obviously music. I mean, I had a passion for it, but at the same time, I don't think I could have made a living out of it. But I had so much passion for the computers and programming. And one of the reasons, because I wanted to understand exactly how this thing works. And I want to understand the entire telecommunications. I want to understand. I mean, I was very much hungry for knowledge, for information, for building things, for solving problems. So when you have that hunger, when you have that kind of perseverance and willing to do things and thinking outside the box, you really don't think about other problems. You leave everything behind you. I didn't even know about all the problems I used to have in Baghdad, or somebody came and hit me because I was a Christian, or they were hanging people on the street. All these memories are there, but I don't think they don't bother me anymore, because I've got bigger things in life to do, and I have a passion for something. So but maybe what made me strong, I guess. I mean, in Baghdad, we had to go and actually see people hanging in the street and killing people on the street, you know.
Wow.
And I was only 11 years old, right? You
Wow.
can imagine. But some people maybe they maybe get damaged. It didn't. Yeah, I mean, it affected me. This was like, why are they doing this? This is very vicious. This is very crazy, you know.
Wow.
So that actually made me even think a little bit more in terms of being more free and in terms of being more liberal, in terms of opening my mind to this, you know. And I was to a certain extent interested in politics as well, you know. So trying to understand that.
Yeah. So there's a whole dichotomy of what following politics and believing it right, but then also having it adversely affect you. So we talk about your journey. How, where, and when did you land in the United States?
Oh, I came to the United States in 1986. After being in Sweden 10 years, I was actually offered an opportunity in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So that was the first company that actually wanted to conduct an interview with me, and then I actually flew over to Dallas, and I was hired there as a software developer. So I started my development of the software at that company called DSP Technologies, and I did a pretty good job there. And then I was promoted to head of the whole software development. And then after that, I went to another company called DSE Communications that was acquired by Alcatel. I was actually managing software, and then I moved to Ericsson, which was a Swedish company.
Yes.
And there I was doing mostly system level architectural work in terms of broadband, internet, and all sort of things, the mobile. So I got involved with a lot of different technologies, both from programming the system level. And so I was very much passionate about that because I want to learn and I want to basically solve a lot of challenging problems in the industry, you know.
Okay, so you came over as a professional, which is fantastic, and then you had a series of great opportunities, some of which you headed up some business units, and then worked kind of full circle over for Ericsson, which is a Swedish company, which is really nice. Kind of full circle, which is great. What was your first solo business venture as an entrepreneur?
My first solo venture was actually, it's a very interesting question. It's not like I thought about going out there and doing this and starting this. One of the things when I was working at Ericsson, I was very much inspired by a lot of challenges that they had because there was a lot of technology. There was a lot of things going on in Ericsson. So I was tasked with actually going out there and evaluating some new technology that they've developed for years and years, right? So I came back for my assessment and I gave a lot of assessment back. And I spent 2 years in Stockholm, so we had to go back to Stockholm, and I worked a lot with Sweden and then decided after that to come back to US. So what happened is there I learned that working for a big company is totally different culture. Things don't move very fast, right? So you get these things about a huge organization, a huge consensus, and things just don't move very fast. So that's what kind of inspired me to say, well, gee, I can really, there are some problems in the industry here, and you can go out there and solve them and move much faster than really a big company can move, because it's taking them years and years to build something like this, and if they ever can build it, and get really all the consensus. So that's what led me to believe that my first venture, after that 2 years I spent in Stockholm, came back to here, and actually we moved from Dallas to Silicon Valley, to the Bay Area. So that was my first venture. I started Newcom Technologies. And actually, my first customer was Ericsson. So they were still very interested to work with me. And so I was very fortunate to be able to get some funding and money from them and being able to build the next generation software for Ericsson and being able to venture on my own. So I started actually my first venture in 97. So pretty much I've been the last 20 years I've been an entrepreneur.
Okay, so All right, and then here's what I found interesting about your story with the Ericsson deal, right? You raised money, and I want to be very frank. I love your story, and I love you already, Francis. And but what I find unique, and I'm really uniquely impressed with, because I'm also I'm not an immigrant myself, but I'm a son of immigrants. My brothers were born in another country, and you have almost a new world mentality. When you started a business, you raise capital. Usually, I'm sorry, I don't mean to generalize, but I will in this case. Usually, a person in your position or a person who's come from another country tends to bootstrap it or not raise money for many reasons. But you decided to raise money. I'm very impressed by that. So, why did you maybe raise money versus using your own capital? Because I'm pretty impressed by that.
Well, I have my own capital. When I started the business, I say, okay, I'm just going to jump the ship from Ericsson.
Yeah.
I was planning to use my own capital, but at the same time, I looked this and assessed this, and Ericsson was very interested to put some capital in there,
Nice.
and I think the reason why, because I needed that capital is first of all, the technology was much more complicated. We needed more capital to have more software developer, more programmer.
No.
The other thing is when you raise a capital, actually, you reduce a little bit the risks there. Because what if you don't meet some of the objectives you have? And I'm not saying you cannot bootstrap. I did this business that I am right now, I'm almost bootstrapped. But I learned a lot from my previous experience that I can bootstrap. But I raised some money, but I didn't raise a lot of money at OpenVPN. So I think raising capital in the beginning it depends what you do, and especially my business in terms of the software, you have to have some capital, because if you're going to be using your own capital and you're going to mortgage your home, you're going to live in an anxiety. You're going to be so my God, I'm going to be running out of money. But you have to plan. So you have to put a business plan, and you say, okay, I'm going to build these things, and I'm going to have to build a pretty reasonable plan. And this is how much it's going to cost me in 2 years. Well, when you look at the cost, well, then you have to get that money somewhere, right? You can't be just spending your own money and hoping that you eventually going to reach that milestone. It's like think the analogy is the car. You're driving a car and you have a gasoline, but then you have to have enough gas to get to the next station to fuel. And now, if you don't plan that and you're in the desert and you run out of gas, what's going to happen? I mean, you're dead. You can't move forward. So this is exactly the capital. The capital is really your fuel. So if you have enough your own capital, then that's great. But you need to have a business plan there to understand what is going to be your cash flow, what is your balance sheet, where are you going to spend the money, what are the goals you're going to achieve. Otherwise, you're not going to reach there.
True. Now, what was how long was the first business, and then what was that exit like? Was it a buyout, exit event? How long did you have for, and what was that exit like?
Well, the exit, I would say it was mostly like, mostly a buyout, and it was, I can't disclose a lot of that about that, but it was mostly, I made a lot of money in terms of the services we provided for that company. Pretty much that company, I owned it 100%.
Okay.
The capital that I got from Ericsson did not require any equity, so I didn't give any. I structured it in such a way I didn't give any equity away. So.
Oh wow! So I guess you got an exit there. You did fairly well. Now at that point, you have the tech background. You got some financial resources.
Yes.
So especially compared to where you came from. What was your second business?
The second business, then I get kind of a little bit complacent. I said, okay, let me do the second business, which was the packet stream. So I came up with a very innovative, technology and saying, okay, whatever the money came from this first one, I can move it over there. And that's a mistake I did, but you learn from the mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But then what I did is I raised more money from venture capitalists.
Okay.
And we actually introduced the product in the marketplace. It was more quality of service product, QS. But sometimes your timings can wrong. So my second venture really didn't go very well. We didn't bankrupt this, but we had to close it.
Wow.
And the reason why, and we got caught in 2000 when the .com just went down.
Yeah.
And we actually survived that anyhow. And we have a venture capitalists that decommitted. They didn't give us all the money that they committed to because of the market. Then what happened after that is basically that 9/11 happened, September 11th.
Correct.
And boom, that was disastrous also for the economy. And just the company, we said, well, you know what? We're just going to close it, pay all our vendors. And then after that, I start, venturing into, I did some project related to future of Iraq. So I made some money. So I really didn't put all my eggs in one basket. So as an entrepreneur, you have to be careful about, spending all your money and putting all, eggs in one basket. So, and that's, one of the things that did allow me to start OpenVPN and start bootstrapping and brought a few investors. I mean, I do have investors in OpenVPN.
Now let's talk about that, because we talked about the struggle. We talked about a failure, not a failure, but maybe a second endeavor that didn't go, as well as planned, whatever, whether it be an external market force or strategy, right? But it brought you to your third venture, which you're at this point, which is OpenVPN, which, as I understand, is quite successful. So walk us through what you do and how you make money, and as much as you're comfortable, range of revenue level, range of employees. I know you're a private company, but whatever you're comfortable sharing, because we'd like to get a flavor for where you're at and how you did it.
Okay, so the way we did this, really, I mean, this is when I met James, the co-founder. It's an open source, and the open source, typically the model is you provide a software that's pretty much free out there, and people can use it. So initially there was a lot of adoption because it's free. So think of it, it's a freemium model. You give something for free, and basically then you get a lot of adoption. But then we have to think about, we need capital for this. We have to build our commercial. How do we leverage? What is a business model to think about this? So the model was with this open source, most of the people who uses open source OpenVPN was mostly geeks. So I would refer to them as a geek market. So people can really take the code, can compile it, can build, but not everybody is a geek, right? So what we did is we built another layer on top of it to make it better UI, a better experience, and we have kind of more of a commercial version of the product itself. So we created a subscription model for that, okay? So while I was doing with that, of course, I put some of my own money. Then I was actually raising capital. So I did raise up to $1 million for this company, at that time. So that $1 million allowed us to build a commercial. And once we introduced the commercial, then we actually had already a lot of traffic. We already have a lot of free user. So we were able to actually leverage on that to convert a lot of these to actually paying customers, okay? So we have a lot of business customers right now. We get more than, I would say 12,000 business customers, and every month we get more than 300 right now, about 400 new business customers. And also we introduce a product for the consumer, for individuals, called Private Tunnel. Probably you heard that name, Private Tunnel, which is for individual users.
Correct.
So in terms of the revenue, I can't give you the numbers. It's a little bit confidential, but I can say to you, we're profitable. We're a multi-million-dollar in revenue, and we've got close to I would say 350,000 paying customers. Okay.
Wow.
So that's the end user customer. So it's an aggregate. So you got a business that have 10 employees, 10 users. Our average revenue per user is pretty good actually per month. So some they pay us annually, some they pay us, monthly. But even the money that I raised, honestly, I learned this the kind of a little bit the hard way how I would build a business, and that's more interesting because this is very general, right? So I raised $1 million, but I didn't spend that money. The $1 million allowed me to sometimes go negative, right, for a while, say for a few months, and then I was able to acquire more customers and more revenue. So that money would come back into the balance sheet. So I'll have more buffer. So that's how I've been planning my venture. And the other thing what I've done is focus, because there was all kind of directions, right? So when I met James, he built this open source, and we were thinking about all kind of direction. And I thought to myself, we go all these directions, and I understand there are so many different use cases, there are so many different applications, and if we're going to sell it to enterprise, we're going to sell it to this, we're going to need a lot of money. So we have to focus. So I was more interested in the business model of this. It's one thing you build a product, but when you build a product, you have to make sure whatever features and capability, it's very targeted. When it's targeted, then you can validate that in the marketplace and see, does it stick? Do I get some revenue out of it? And then incrementally add more feature, incrementally improve your product. But also when you incrementally improve your product, you're incrementally improving your business. So a lot of entrepreneurs think about like, what is the ultimate product? So when they're thinking about the ultimate product, the problem with that is basically it costs a lot of money to build that ultimate product. And when you build that ultimate product, maybe the timing is not right. And maybe that ultimate product has cost you so much money, and eventually it may not stick, may not be a lot of customers out there, and now you have to rethink. But think of it as you're building it gradually. So if you're building a building, well, I don't know if this kind of analogy is the right. Instead of basically you're building one office at a time and you're leasing it, and then you're building the next one, and then you're building the next one. So you're learning from this incrementally, So you're building your business incrementally rather than trying to build the ultimate product.
Okay, so wow. Okay, so at this point, it's fair to say, and you don't got to answer because I can gather that your MMR or your monthly recurring revenues in the 7 figures based off of your subscription levels, whether people buying for the year or pay monthly. So
yes.
You're in that, and we don't talk about this enough, I think, because we kind of talk about entrepreneurship journeys. Then we talk about how people, were homeless, and then they were big. But then it's another skill set. You're no longer. I think this is a compliment. You're no longer an entrepreneur. You're now a CEO, business owner, business manager, right? In a good way.
Yes.
And that's a different skill set. That's a different muscle, right?
Absolutely.
So walk us through how that transition was, because I'm kind of like, I kind of get fascinated about certain things. And right now, I'm fascinated on the journey of the successful entrepreneur going into running a company. And, a lot of people, a lot of times you hear situations like Twitter and others where maybe the founder should have maybe backed off at a certain point, and other cases where, like Jeff Bezos, the entrepreneur successfully made that journey. So give us through how you successfully made that journey from being kind of that entrepreneur to the CEO.
Well, you have to surround yourself with very good people, and you have to surround yourself with good advisors and mentors, so they can help you, advise you through this. So one of my advisor, he is actually a CEO of a company, and David Kaplan, and he was actually previously the CEO of Veritas Software, and I met him almost every week, if not at least once a month. And for every phase of the company, I would sit down and give him my idea about this. Is this because I tell you, this was not easy. It was a struggle. So I'm not going to say this was just like, it was a struggle because in the beginning we were running out of money. And then I came to David and he was a great advisor for me. I say, well, I think I need to raise more money. And he would say, no, don't do that. Don't raise money because you're going to learn it the hard way. And I say, well, you need to come up with a solution without the money. So I had to really go back and think about it, right? And I had to come up with a solution to solve this. So you have to surround yourself with good people, advisor, but also the good people around you to do the work, but not necessarily perfect people, but also understanding their capability in terms of their strength and their weakness. If you're trying to make a person and maybe they have certain weakness and you see that weakness, but you don't see that strength of that person, and then you decide, oh, I'm going to fire this person. Oh, he's not able to do this. You're going to fail so that's the transition as an entrepreneur because you're so kind of perfect, right? You want to do everything. You have so much passion for it, but the people are coming with you. Maybe they may have different views and they have strength and weakness. So really, it's like puzzles. You have to think about how to fit all these things together, right? And you have to be very, very flexible and being able to basically take some of the feedbacks and think about it and make the right decision. So I never forget what David told me once. He said, when you are in red, meaning if you're negative cash flow, time is your enemy. Okay, because you're running out of money, right? You're spending more than what you're making.
True.
And that's where we were. And he said, but if you are in black, when you're profitable, so get to profitability sooner. He said, time is your friend. Well, I say, but everybody in Silicon Valley, they're just running money and they don't care about profitability, even the company going public.
Correct. Correct.
So, and he kind of didn't believe in that model. So in a way, that gives me a little bit different perspective about this. Yeah, I brought the company to profitability and I still am profitable. And right now, our challenge is not really the capital; the challenge is really the resources and finding the people.
Yeah, and managing growth, obviously.
And managing growth. That's a different. But you have to be able to now start delegating to people. You have to be able to really somehow finding good managers and being able to get the people to collaborate, being able to get the people to be very interested in what you're doing. And sometimes here's the thing, is you have to know how to invest on the next generation of product. You can't just expect, well, I'm going to hire a person and he's going to be productive overnight. It's not going to happen. So you have to invest on that person and see exactly what value they're going to add a year from now, or maybe 6 months from now. And sometimes they may not. So that would be the case. So it's really it's the challenge of solving a lot of these issues and problems. So if you are a problem solver, then you're going to do pretty well. And another example, always, David told me, is that a good CEO is like a baby. Okay, they're so tired when they go to sleep. You just go to sleep. But when you wake up in the middle of the night, you cry like a baby because you have so many things to think about.
That's right. All right. I want to touch on, because our new theory subscribers are, for the most part, millennials. I think our data supports about 80%. And managing IT guys and gals are not easy to begin with because, you're dealing with some really smart people, highly educated people, but you got to motivate them towards a certain goal. And sometimes you got to work long hours, and, it's just not easy just by nature of the business, right? But what has been your experience on millennials, their work ethic, and how to best manage them?
Well, this is a very interesting question because I went through like the 80s. The 80s typically and the 90s was you define a project and you have an army of engineers, people would work for you and you basically would meet milestones and people are there to do their job, to finish it and to get the product out, right?
Yeah.
That has changed specifically with open source. The open source are more people who are very interested in the technology, that they have the passion for the product, because most of the people who are working right now with our core technology They're not working just for the money. They're working because they like what they're doing. So, in a way, you have to give them some level of autonomy. Okay.
Okay.
So, but that level of autonomy when you give them, that doesn't mean, but you have to also function as a salesperson, as a CEO. You have to sell your idea to your employee. You have to sell your idea to those people that they believe in your vision. Once you do that, once they believe in your vision and you believe in all these things, then they get so excited. I mean, I've had so many arguments, right, with my co-founder, right, disagreement and all that stuff. But sometimes, like, it was very difficult for me to get through his head. But once I got him to be convinced about it, then he created miracle stuff, the software he writes, or even the people who are working. So you have to give them that kind of autonomy to really, but at the same time, you have to sell that idea that you have and the product you have in mind. You know it's going to sell in the market, but then maybe that person, maybe he's interested in something else. But so you have to combine the two. You have to sell that idea. And why do you believe this is good? This is so exciting. This is so interesting. So they get behind you, and then they will really create some miracles.
All right. I don't want to get too deep into this next subject or what we're talking about now, because we could probably talk forever. But I do want to have you weigh in on when you're talking to millennials or a millennial, right? Let's call them a high potential millennial. And I had the mixed pleasure of leading millennials on the work front, right? And that's why I decided to write about and start a whole resource around millennials, because of my fascination and I believe they're underserved. But when you talk to millennials, and you know, you and I think you're a drop older than me, but I'm a little old school, right? So, you know, when I lead a discussion about compensation, I'll use words like global compensation. I'll use words like benefits. I'll use words like, you know, 401k. I'll use words like, you know, long-term financial planning, because one is I frankly may not have the money to pay you all this cash. And number two is I do want you to be tied in the future success of the company. But my experience, and it's been probably about 20 people deep with millennials, when you get into that discussion, you see the gloss come over their eyes. They're looking at me like, dude, you're a dinosaur. We don't believe in the corporate cemetery. We don't believe in what you're selling me. I want you to pay me well for what I'm doing now. I'm not lazy. I'll work for you. I'll do whatever you want, but I got to get paid. And that's cash. And I'm sitting there like, well, global comp and exit and blah, blah, blah. And they're looking at me like I got 10 heads, right? So how do you manage through that?
Well,
but am I right, Francis? Do you agree? I mean, do you relate to that? Do you think I'm?
Oh, absolutely. I relate to that. But now it's a little bit easier for me to solve, because I do face that challenge right now. Just to give you an example, in the Silicon Valley, just people who are graduating here, they're coming in and they're asking for $180,000 a year, or with a little experience, they're asking for $200K, right?
Correct. So
that's and not very little experience, and maybe so that's definitely a challenge. So now for us right now, it's a little bit easier to solve because we have the money. So we offer them the money, but on top of that, that's not enough. You have to offer them stocks options. Yeah. The stocks options are kind of okay, longer term. Maybe if we exit one day, you're going to make a lot of money. But the money right now you pay them is really, they need that for cash flow, because if they have the family, that they have to support their family. They have to do that, right? Because if they have to worry about the money, I don't think as an entrepreneur you're going to succeed. I really believe you're going to have to pay the people what they really deserve. And that's what I've been doing in the beginning. And so you have to separate the capital from the resources itself. When you're bringing an engineer or somebody, you're going to have to pay them what they are worth, right? And sometimes right now, we are hiring people outside the U.S., right? So we've got people in Europe, we've got now people in Ukraine. Obviously, we're paying less, but they have great engineers, right? So we're planning all that. I really don't believe, in my opinion, that you're going to be able to convince somebody unless they are co-founders, right, and they have a lot of cash out there, what they don't have to worry about, right? Yeah. So you need some level of capital to even pay yourself if you need the cash flow and to pay these people. But on top of it, you have to convince them this is not just about the job, but it's stocks options, and there are some future in the company, and there are some rewards. But at the same time, other rewards in terms of this is a very interesting area. You're very interested to work with this kind of technology, and we're building the next, best product in the marketplace.
No, Francis, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But like, okay, so and there was a very good answer, because you're now looking at it not as an entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur. I'm sorry, but as an entrepreneur, and I'm still learning as an entrepreneur. But as an extent, every dollar sometimes I pay people, I look at it comes out of my pocket, right? But as a business owner, you look at it as an investment. But what happens when you hit critical mass and you have a large team and you're cooking and things are good financially, but then either your CFO or your head of human resources says, Francis, I love you, but we're not offering a 401k match, or we're not offering deferred comp, but we're bleeding cash as a result of this, having a rock star staff. So are you usually aligned with your CFO, co-founder, and HR to say, hey, if our run rate or burn rate is higher in human resources? Or do you come up with a budget and try to work within that? Because that's the part where the rubber meets the road. So I'm in agreement with you philosophically. I want you to pay your engineers above average and the rest to get the better people. But then it comes the reality of it, where if they don't accept deferred comp or some type of global comp, it's going to suck your resources dry. So how do you manage that internally with your co-founders, head of HR, CFO, etc.?
Well, right now, obviously, it's for us. It's different for right now, because we do have 401k plan. We do have actually we are a little bit much more generous when it comes to not only compensation. So we have a compensation. We do provide 401k plan. We do match. And the matching, we do it in terms of profit sharing. But the profit sharing, the way we do it is we do it in such a way we say, hey, if we're more profitable, more revenue, you're going to get better matching of your 401k plan. We have very good vacation. So we've got a lot of benefits. We pay insurance. We do all that stuff. But the way I do it, you see, when I hire somebody, I have to look at the total cost of that person. So it's not like you're just hiring a person for $100,000.
Well, that's what I was getting at. When you hire somebody for $100,000, it really costs you $2,000. But then, they're like, hey, Francis, I want to get paid higher, maybe on the cash ratio of what you're willing to expect, which drives the cost even higher. So sorry, but I'm so excited to hear your answer. I'll shut up. But yeah. So how do you handle that?
Well, you mean getting paid higher?
You were saying if somebody comes in at 100, your total costs you 200, right? So let's say let's give this a specific example. Tom, the engineer, comes in, and my salary is going to be 100, right? And your total cost is 200. So you manage that expectation, right, in terms of budgeting. But then me being a millennial. I'm not a millennial, but let's say a millennial is like, listen, and they're smart. I know it costs you 200. I don't care about 401k. I don't care about employee of the month club. I don't want to play ping pong in the basement, but I want to make 140. And you got to say, okay, but then if I pay you 140, then it's going to cost me, 240. It's still going to cost you the same amount. So how do you struggle with that, or have you not faced that yet? Because that's what I came across with managing millennials, where they wanted more of a cash ratio than I was willing to accept by driving up my total cost. So that was
but you have to have your own criteria, right? And define your own criteria. And if somebody's coming only they want cash, then maybe that person is the wrong person for your organization. I just some example that I have. Okay, some example. I have a guy, and he came to me, and he's good. We just hired him, right? So and basically, I was trying to give him a raise, and we had that discussion exactly. And then he said, well, the example that I have, I'm supposed to make 180K. That's the standard. And I say, okay, but let's sit down and figure out what you're working with here. You're working with a lot of, and a company that's growing at this rate. You're working with something that's very well known in the marketplace. So there where you have to be a sales guy also. So I end up explaining to him, look, if I may be giving you 140, I'm not giving you 180, but I can promise you, okay, you don't have to contribute to 401k. That's your option, but we have the 401k plan. And top of it, by the way, there are bonuses. If you can exceed my expectation and you're gonna do the greatest job and you think you're great, then we've got bonuses too. And I do get bonuses too. So you have to have all these tools as a salesperson, right? As a CEO, you have to really convince the person about it, right? Otherwise, or in some cases, it may not work. So we hire people outside the U.S. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Maybe in our situation is a little bit different. We have people working, like we had a guy who worked for Red Hat, right? But he was contributing to our open source. But he was so passionate about it, right? But when he came to me and he wants to join OpenVPN, obviously he wanted to get paid. And I say, okay, I don't have a problem giving a good pay. And that's what I did. But now he works from Norway. We don't pay all these benefits. We don't pay all these taxes. And so, his pay probably is pretty good, right? Or somebody that I'm paying, maybe the group I'm paying in Ukraine. But I don't know how you operate. But if you are more of a virtual operation, it's a little bit different. You have a little bit more flexibility because if you can operate virtually, now you can have people outside the U.S., right? So I would take it case by case, and it's really a sales job. It depends what you have in your tools. Can you give more cash? Can you give more in stocks options and so on?
Okay. So that makes sense. Again, maybe bringing them back to the global comp discussion, incorporating them into the vision of the company, give them some cash bonuses, and then gain alignment. Francis, I had high expectations of this discussion, to be quite candid, and you far exceeded those expectations. Just a few.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was really my pleasure. And a few quick questions. What was the last book you read?
What is what? I'm sorry.
The last book you read.
The book here. What's that?
No, I'm sorry. What was the last book you read?
Oh, the last book I read. It was. It's called High Stakes, No Prisoners.
Nice.
And it's by Charles Ferguson.
Beautiful. And then, what's your favorite book of all time?
I think my favorite book of all time, I would say, is the 5 Pillars of Prosperity.
Very nice. That's a good one.
That's
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I know this is written by my friend, but
nice. Now, give us, how can we find you? How can we find you? How can we find your business?
You can find us at, we have a website, openvpn.net or privatetunnel.com. And you can email me at just Francis, Francis, at openvpn.net or at privatetunnel.com.
That is fantastic. And frankly, anybody who listened into this, this was kind of a book in itself. And I'm just happy that you shared your journey with me. This will be up shortly. And again, Francis, we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your invitation here.
All right, awesome.
Looking forward to hear it.
Awesome, Francis. That was excellent. It'll be up shortly. And I appreciate your time. And